This is the building of Farm Biotest, the Ukrainian company, clinical and diagnostical center. In fact, they were taking tests from people, usual biochemistry of blood, all kinds of blood tests, and nearby another building. So, clinical and diagnostical center here, Farm Biotest. Also, at the same building on the third floor, they had wards where they were doing tests on volunteers. They were testing different pills, different medicines that hasn't always had been through the stage of testing on animals. They received these medicines from the US and from Europe. Here they were tested on people for a little amount of money. We found documents which showed that they used raw materials of low quality that were not allowed to be used in other countries, or they were testing just invented medicines, like, for example, medicines against coronavirus, and also different drugs in forms of spray, analgesics, so painkillers in forms of spray. Nearby, there is a neighboring building, which was the administrative building of farm factory. So, here there was one owner. On Microhim, which is the other building, they were producing medicines. Then he becomes the shareholder of Farm Biotest, where they do testing of these medicines. So he gets this loop. He gives himself the positive certificates that the medicine has been successfully through the medical testing and it can be used. What kind of medicines were they? All kinds of medicines for the heart, against viruses, antibiotics. The most important one was analgesic drug in the form of a spray, similar to morphine. According to the documents of the specialists who work here, the scientists, they gave conclusions that it's not advisory to have this medicine in the form of a spray because there is immediate addiction in a person with euphoria, hallucinations, when the pain symptoms are numbed. And this is what we hear about the Ukrainian soldiers from our soldiers, that they would see Ukrainian soldiers who would walk ahead without an arm or without a leg. It might not be the result of the drugs, but also the result of the usage of this particular medicine. Also, there was raw materials of low quality that was received from different countries with certificates showing that it should not be used, like aspirin, for example. But they would still use it in different pills and test it on Ukrainians who were here, and either allowed or not allowed it for sale. Also, they were doing experiments on contaminating pills with different bacteria that are here. Like, if we have a person, we as humans, we all have bacteria in our body, but if you get more and more and more of the same bacteria in your body, then you can get sick. And when from the US laboratory they received the medicine against coronavirus, which wasn't tested on animals, they started to test it on humans right here, right away. And then we had this strange outbreak of coronavirus here, because there were many people who would come from Ukraine, the pensioners and other people who would come here. So this migration was happening, and this disease was brought here. And people would come from Ukraine, and on the third day after, they would get into hospitals with a severe case of coronavirus. Severe form of coronavirus, plus the vaccine that was brought here, Pfizer and AstraZeneca. We found documents where the employees of these two organizations refused to be vaccinated, and then they were fired as a result. So they were also testing it on their own, clinical testing on their own employees, and even there were lethal cases. We found documents confirming that. According to what the local people say, The medical conclusions that were given to them, they were not real. So when were people taking these different medicines, they did not know what exactly they were taking. There were also many documents with description of severe side effects, but still they were continuing to be given these medicines to the people. The request is to step over it. When, according to the locals, they received the order to get out of here, to take all the employees and documents out of here, they took documents and some of the equipments and medicines. They took it out. So when Ukrainian soldiers went out of this building, they went to the neighboring houses, residential houses, and they were constantly shooting from grenade launchers into these two buildings. Also, according to the locals, they were constantly sending the coordinates for artillery strikes. And in the basement of this building, they found treacle and a canister with fuel. So they definitely wanted to blow up this building. And when we were working here, then from time to time, and in the beginning actually constantly, we would find trap mines here. Like each morning we would find them, and the night we would find these transponder devices, after which the shelling of this building would continue again and again.
Definitely trying to destroy the place.
There must have been a lot of stuff on the hard drives here, according to what I know.
It's interesting, they stripped out the hard drives and even the processors from these computers.
Repeat your phrase.
They've taken out the hard drives and even the memory and the processors for these computers. So there's absolutely no data that can be recovered.
The workers' journal.
Yeah.
Bureau, Max.
All of this is in Russian.
У них небольшое количество денег было, украинцы были плохо обеспечены. И небольшие деньги. Там есть.
After that we go to the basement. The medicine against coronavirus was offered to people when they were sick, but they didn't know the mechanism of action of this medicine. So it was unpredictable how the disease would develop, and they had here all the required equipment for resuscitation and reanimation, which means that it didn't go so smoothly for them. Any deaths that we know about, the local people say that yes, there were lethal cases, there were deaths, also deaths among the employees of these institutions who took part in these tests, but the medical conclusions were that it would be a heart attack, for example, and that for a person who is 30 years of age. So it's really kind of weird and unlikely. And plus there was a huge staff rotation because people were refused to get vaccinated, so they would resign instead. And they were refused to be vaccinated with Pfizer or with AstraZeneca vaccines, so they resigned. What were the years when it was happening? It was during the whole time of conflict from 2014. We found the documents dated 2015, 2016, and of course during the coronavirus time when this foreign vaccine would appear here. So during the whole conflict it was happening.
looks very safe the way it's stored.
Yeah, right.
Clinical trial. Basically, they were performing clinical trials on unsuspecting people here. And people from Severodonetsk will come here, medical treatment, they'd inject them full of shit, and they'd see if they'd die or not. So a lot of these COVID vaccines were actually tested here. Can she tell us once again about the COVID vaccines?
Тут проходила вакцинация от коронавируса, как население.
Vaccination against coronavirus was happening here. It was both for just population and the employees of the place.
Были найдены
We found documents where the employees of these organizations refused to vaccinate themselves by Pfizer or AstraZeneca, and then they were fired for that. Yeah, they had to accept the vaccine or they had to be fired.
And I think that it will be very. It was very bad experience for all Ukrainian people, and people didn't know what happened with them. They try to find some money, to have some money, but they don't know that it can be deadly for them.
Rubella virus. Yeah, look at this.
Здесь сколько? Огромное количество.
So there's quite a lot of these cards that they're looking at. They found many of them. They are like blood testing cards. Normally these cards were used for testing the blood of babies. Here, she says, they took a lot of blood from people to test this blood. For example, how it reacts to different medicines and all other different tests. It would cost a lot of money for the US to take so much blood, and here it was for free. And the samples were found here and they were sent directly to Kiev. So the question, why would you send it to Kiev for testing when you have the clinic here with equipment worth of so many billions? It's totally illogical. So they were looking for Slavic blood. Yes, but as tests, why do you think that was the case? Probably for the same tests, like how would such and such disease or bacteria or virus behave with this particular blood, so that they would be more efficient in the way they affect a human. Like what affects the central neural system, or maybe the change of DNA or something, so that people would be born with certain deficiencies. So they were not taking the blood to do something useful for Slavic people, but to harm them. Exactly. It's the card to collect.
Yeah, I photographed a couple.
This is the cards with blood samples from the volunteers. So there's spills of blood here on each card. It shows the name of the medicine that's been tested, and the name of the volunteer.
Look at this.
Normally this card is used to test the blood of newly born babies, but here what they were testing it for is really unclear because we can't read the codes. We don't know this legend.
Teaching English.
Значит, на питательных средах выращивают бактерии.
They grow bacteria in here, both pathogenic and non-pathogenic bacteria.
Okay.
Вот, ну а потом, когда
And
их количество уже могут
when they get them in good quantities, in enough quantities, they can use them to contaminate either medicines or people.
все оборудование.
All this equipment is foreign. Mostly the supplier of equipment in Europe or in the US. Here it says UK, US.
Pharma biotest. Check this out.